Hello, and welcome to a learning lesson from Neighbor Settlement offered during the coronavirus pandemic of 2020. This 10-minute video will introduce you to the benefits of journaling, how a journal is a primary source, and encourage you to express yourself about our current pandemic. Why should you keep a journal during this time? For thousands of years, people have expressed written thoughts on one format or another. Journals, diaries, scrapbooks. Today we also use Facebook, Twitter, or Snapchat. They can vary from very personal reflections to documenting what was eaten for breakfast. Journals collect details from daily life, which can give people a glimpse about the times in which they were written. Your journal captures a moment in time. Not only are journals important for the historical record, they are mental exercises too. Keeping a journal can help with stress relief and helping to move past trauma, inspiring creativity and process ideas, reflecting on your reactions to events, strengthening your inner voice, creating a feeling of being in control, or slowing down your mind. Journals are also important resources for historians. The words you write today in a journal, diary, or social media post can help future historians determine what this moment in time was like for those that lived it. Before we begin journaling, let's learn about the type of sources historians use to tell stories to interpret the past. A primary source is a first-hand or original source of information that provides a direct connection to the past. So things that were produced from a first-hand source or in a moment in history are considered primary. Letters, diaries, birth certificates, notebooks, receipts, home movies, photographs, drawings, clothing, even buildings can be a primary source. They provide valuable content that cannot be found elsewhere. On the other hand, a secondary source is a source of information that was created later by someone who did not experience firsthand or participate in the events or conditions that a historian is researching. So, books, articles in a magazine, or anything written after the fact or from a second-hand source are considered secondary. It's important to note that something can contain both types of sources. For example, newspapers are more often considered secondary sources. However, an editorial or field reporter's story could be considered a primary source. So with newspapers, historians must consider what is printed and by whom to determine whether it's primary or secondary. Take a few moments to think about the different kinds of primary and secondary sources. Did you name all these sources? Letters, diaries, journals, newspapers, maps, images, photos, video or audio recordings, legal documents, artifacts, clothing, buildings, all examples of primary sources. While reference books, biographies, newspapers, articles in a magazine, encyclopedias, or even Wikipedia are secondary sources. Let's practice journaling by looking at a primary source in Naperville's history. We're going to look at the daily diary of 11-year-old Merle Clarke, who lived through the 1918 flu pandemic. The journal is part of the collection of the Naperville Heritage Society. Merle Clarke and her family survived the influenza outbreak of 1918. She was born in December of 1907, and her father was the chief supervisor for the municipal lights plant. The family lived on Center Street. Merle was described as being logical, patient, appreciative, and persevering. From Merle's journal, we know that she was very sick with the flu and could not sit up in bed much of the time, but she still managed to write something in her journal each day. What can you discover about the 1918 flu pandemic, especially how it was misnamed the Spanish flu? Check out this secondary source if you'd like to know more. Next, you'll see the image of Merle's daily journal and hear the passages of her diary. It's important to know that personal journal writing has no strict rules. You can write a little or you can write a lot. Here's what Merle wrote while she was ill. October 27th, Papa came down with the flu. October 28th, I stayed home from school. October 29th, the teacher sent me home from school with the flu. October 30th, it rained all day. October 31st, the Edwards Sanitarium had 6,000 fine. November 1st, tonight I threw up blood. My fever was 104 and I got a touch of pneumonia. November 2nd, Mr. Kleehauer came and brought us a bouquet of asters. Okay, now it's time to journal. As you read the transcript from 11-year-old Merle Clarke's journal, think about the following. What about her writing indicates that she was a child? What can we learn about her normal daily life from the journal? Does this excerpt give us the whole picture of Merle's life at the time? Does anything stand out to you? What is missing from her writing that a typical 11-year-old might include? You may want to take a moment and pause this video while you're doing your journal writing. Let's look at another page of Merle's journal. November 3rd, this morning, the nurse came. November 4th, Mr. Kleehauer called. The royal neighbors sent Mama a bouquet and I sat up. November 5th, today was elections and the Republicans won. November 6th, today we got a letter from Uncle Harry with his coupon for a Christmas package. November 7th, today the war was declared over and everybody went wild, but it was only false. November 8th, Mama and I sat up for 3 hours, and Mr. Kleehauer came to see how we were. November 9th, Mama and I dressed today, but the boys got relapses. November 10th, Mrs. Kleehauer and her 2 youngest sons came to inquire about us. November 11th, the Great World War is over, and I went outdoors a little while. November 12th, today the nurse went home. November 13th, today Papa went to work. Okay, it's time again to journal. We know from Merle's journal entries that a nurse came to take care of the family. Pretend you're that nurse. Write about your interactions with Merle and how you feel about what's happening. Here are some things you could write about. Was nursing in someone's home different than the hospital? Why would a nurse go to someone's house instead of a doctor's office? We also know something else significant happened during this time. What worldwide event occurred? How did everyone feel about it? Now, it's time to learn more about Merle Clarke. Check out this secondary source if you'd like to know more about her life. Now it's time for you to be a voice in history. There is a nationwide crisis and you're living through it. Are you hopeful, afraid, confident, confused, all of the above? Use your experiences during the coronavirus outbreak to journal your thoughts and ideas during this time. Your writing may even become a primary source 100 years from now. Naper Settlement is collecting from community members right now so our future historians can tell meaningful stories about the 2020 COVID pandemic. Time to journal in your own words. Here are some topics you can write about. Were you concerned when you first heard that COVID-19 had come to the United States? What scares you about the outbreak? Have the changes you have had to make affected your life? Do you think some things will never be the same again? What have you enjoyed about the changes? How are you keeping connected to your friends? What do you think about going to school from home? You can learn more about the Naper Settlement 2020 Pandemic Collecting Initiative at napersettlement.org. Thanks and stay well.